Board of Education meeting in order. To start off, I need a motion to appoint a temporary chair for our organizational meeting.
I move that we approve appointing.
We've not done it in 9 years. And it continues.
Yes, I move that we appoint Bruce as the temporary chair of this meeting.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Can I vote? No, I'm kidding. With that, the first order of business is election of officers. And with that, we'll start with chairman. Can we have a motion to elect the chair?
I move the Bruce Likely position of chair.
Thank you. Second?
Second?
Do we cast our ballots at this time?
Yes.
Now, Molly, do you want to go one by one, or do you want to do them all at the same time?
Usually do them as you do them.
Okay.
No hanging chat.
Thank you. Votes for Mr. Likely.
Thank you very much. I will try to serve as best I can. Next is a motion to elect a vice chairman, and I would like to make the motion to elect Gil Bray as vice chairman.
Second.
Votes?
Votes for Mr. Bray.
Congratulations. Thank you. Next is a motion to appoint the secretary, and I would like to make that motion to have Karen Burke continue as secretary if she agreed to do so.
I'll second.
Votes for Ms. Burke.
Wonderful. Congratulations and thank you. Next is appointment of counsel to the board. Do we have a motion?
It's a consent
Oh, I'm sorry. We're on to the consent agenda at this point, which is appointment of the counsel to the board, medical advisor, designation of signatories, and authorization of superintendent to attend meetings. A motion to accept the consent agenda and let Gary attend the meetings?
Yes. I move to.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next is approval of the 2013 meeting date calendar. It is on the website. Actually, it's not on the website because we haven't approved it yet. We have a copy of it. Do I have a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now, approval for format of board agendas. Can I have I know we're going to have some discussion on that. Can I have a motion to approve it?
So moved.
Did you want to talk a little bit
Or
about
do we
that?
do the discussion? Oh.
Yeah, you wanted to bring up a point on the agenda.
I just want to, whether it's tonight or at some future meeting, I thought it might be interesting as a group to discuss the agenda format, because I was wondering if there might be opportunity to engage the public a little bit more than what we do now, and to do that as part of our meetings, because I've seen some other districts do things slightly differently, and just thought it might be worth talking about. So I don't know how much you want to get into that tonight or put it on the agenda for... We have a pretty full agenda tonight, so...
I think it's worthy of talking about, perhaps at a future agenda.
Okay.
Yeah, with some recommendations, or at least so that we can see what other districts do. That might be interesting.
Right.
I know one of the challenges that we have is because of the structure of school board meetings and our ability to pre-announce what we're going to cover at a meeting, there's not a lot of leeway that we have in what we can comment on or talk about in a board meeting. So that creates some challenges for us. I believe that's why our agenda is the way that it is. Any other comments, thoughts? Motion to approve the agenda stands. We have it. Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Approval of board committee members. We have a list that Molly sent out yesterday.
Version is this?
Final.
Yes, the final version. Can I have a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Oh, so moved. Jill seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Wonderful.
But
And then-
thank you, Bruce, for trying to make us all up.
You're welcome. We did have a couple of adjustments. For everybody's information, there are procedures for the effective board meetings approved March 24, 1983, and routine agenda items. And at this point, I'd like to adjourn to our regular meeting. Right? Need a motion for that? Motion?
Motion to adjourn to the regular meeting.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, our regular meeting, we have
The Ag Committee.
I love the Ag.
The what?
the Ag
Written
Committee.
off, yeah.
I don't think that was on the original.
It wasn't. So as far as our meeting today, we're going to start with comments from the public, as we do at the beginning of every meeting. If there is anybody from the public that would like to come up and talk, we'd like to know this time. Seeing no one, I want to remind everybody that they can always contact us at the Board of Ed email address. And for those of you who have done so, you'll notice that we do actually read them and oftentimes try to respond. With that, we move on to the consent agenda. Everybody-
Review and approve the regular agenda.
That's a good point. Has everybody had a chance to look at tonight's agenda?
Yep.
Any questions, thoughts, comments? Motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now we'll move on to the consent agenda. Thank you, Karen. Has everybody had a chance to look at the consent agenda?
Yes.
Any questions, comments?
Yeah. Question about Tara Lappa, who is an elementary teacher at Cider Mill. Just wondering, was that to fill a vacancy, or is this an add-on,
There
or?
was a resignation, and so it's
So
still...
she's replacing a resignation? Correct.
Okay. Motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Reports and recognition. Board Chair's report. I just have a few comments this evening. I want to begin by saying how very saddened we are to have heard the tragic loss of our third grade strings teacher, Svetlana Bell. Our hearts go out to her family, her friends, her colleagues, and the students during this difficult time. I'd also like to thank Superintendent Richards, our Human Resources Director, Jane Anderson, and Principal Rico for your rapid and caring response during this tragic event. And I'd like to continue to encourage those who need to do so to seek guidance and support from those who are in place to provide it. On a much lighter note, I'd like to congratulate Principal Harris on her announcement of her upcoming retirement. She's announced that she's going to retire at the end of the school year, and it's with really mixed emotions that we accept that news. While we're saddened to learn of your decision, we're thrilled for you, and we understand your enthusiasm to join your husband, who is already retired and most likely looking forward to having you join her sooner than later. Over the coming months, I'm sure there will be many times that we will continue to thank you and praise you for all you've done for our schools, our students, and our staff. We've been informed by Dr. Richards that he'll be convening a search committee shortly to begin the process of finding a suitable replacement for Principal Harris. I assure you this will be no small task.
Set sail.
Dr. Richards has appointed our Director of Human Resources to chair the search committee and to lead the search and initial review of candidates. The committee will include members of the superintendent's and Middlebrook staff, teachers, members of the board, and members of the Board of Education. The search committee will review candidates and present a short list of finalists to the superintendent for consideration. The final decision on Principal Harris's replacement will be made by the superintendent. Earlier today, Vice Chairman Gilbray, Superintendent Richards, Director of Finance Ken Post, and Director of Special Services Ann Paul met with State Senator Tony Boucher, State Representative Gail Abiel, Wilton Board of Finance Chairman Warren Serenbest to discuss legislation and mandates that are placing extreme burdens on the district's budget and personnel. Senator Boucher and State Representative Lavielle expressed their appreciation for the information that we shared and said they would be working in the coming months to find ways to help reduce some of these burdens being placed on our district and consequently on our budget. We're thankful for their attention to our concerns and are hopeful they will find ways to help reduce the budget burdens being placed on us by Hartford. As a final note, I want everybody to know that I had breakfast with First Selectman Mr. Brennan last Friday. We talked about the progress being made on our toilet rooms. I'm sure we'll hear more about that. He's going to be convening a building committee for Miller Driscoll shortly. Told us that the sewer project looks like it's moving along smoothly, and told me that he's optimistic that the Yankee Gas project will be happening shortly. With that?
I have two items for tonight. As you know, the past few weeks have been marked by two separate and tragic instances of domestic violence. As we've said, and was said very eloquently a moment ago, our thoughts have been with the families involved in these incidents. Although these incidents occurred outside of school buildings, they have created some additional challenges for us. And I thought at this point it might be helpful to quickly review the general protocols that we follow in such incidents. It's a given that each situation is unique, but there are several common objectives that we have as we respond. In terms of our response planning, we do have crisis, I think we're probably aware of this, we have crisis teams in each school that consist of administrators, counselors, social workers, psychologists, teacher leaders. As soon as we can, we convene these teams to review the information at hand and formulate action plans for our response. Our communication to students, part of what we talk about is how we will communicate information to students, is based on their developmental stage. When faced with situations that have involved a loss of life or serious criminal behaviors or adult matters, we do not go into specifics. We offer students and staff counseling if they have needs or if we see that they are struggling. In our dealings with younger children, we believe that the parents should make the determination about what they think their child should know or needs to know. In terms of communication with staff, as soon as we can, we give our staff information about what has happened. We do this so they can have a context for dealing with students who may be affected by a tragedy or a serious incident. Last Sunday, I worked with Mrs. Rico, and we did have an all-staff notification that went out about 5 p.m. on Sunday afternoon. We also reach out to students and families, and we offer our support to the families as they are dealing with whatever challenges have arisen. When school convenes after one of these incidents, we try very diligently, I think, and earnestly to try and normalize the school environment. We work to establish and maintain the calm, purposeful, and vigilant environment in our schools. And the difficulty of this depends on the nature of the crisis, clearly. Part of this is to protect the students from unwarranted intrusions into their private business. Another objective we have is to provide counseling opportunities and support for students and staff as needed. And again, this may be students who say, I need to talk to someone, in which case teachers or administrators direct them to the appropriate person. Or we may observe, and I think our administrators in every building and teachers are very capable of saying that seeing someone may be struggling and refer them to the counselor, the social worker, school psychologist, any of the helping professionals in the building. We also, the last point is that we try to coordinate communication through the central administrative office. Part of our sense is that we want to take the pressure off the schools, and we want to try and help them as they work to normalize the environment, so that a lot of our dealings with the media come through my office, and either I deal with them, or Tim, or Ken, or Ann, or Jane, depending on the circumstance and depending on the number of requests that we've got. We got quite a few requests. Most of them had to do with, are you going to offer counseling services? So part of my purpose in talking to you tonight is to assure you all and the public that that's part of a given that as we go into any kind of serious incident. So we're pleased to report that we've, despite the tragic event of last weekend, that we had, and I think this, again, I appreciate the nice comments about Jenny and her staff. I think we had a good, smooth week at the school, and that we made opportunities available for anybody who needed some extra help in getting through a difficult time. And again, I think it's very difficult. Some of our staff members, it's hard on them because they have long-term relationships with people. In this case, it was 6 years that Svetlana was a colleague. So I think Jenny and her staff would be, I agree, commended for their work and outreach. The other note was another cider mill issue, and I thought this was a typo initially, but cider mill, due to the weather issues, Sandy, had to cancel the turkey trot, which has raised over the years thousands of dollars for a needy Wilton family, food gift baskets and Stop and Shop gift cards. So instead, they created and this is where I thought it was a typo, a fun-drazer raffle, and involving almost 50 activities that students might be interested in, and they would for which they would each buy a ticket for a raffle to win that particular activity. I believe the tickets were $3 each. Excuse me. The offerings are from both teachers and paraprofessionals, and range from playing basketball with a teacher to learning dances from India. Gangman, no, that's different. It reflects the true spirit. Was it Gangman? It reflects the true. I'm not going to do it. Reflects the true spirit of giving of ourselves to help others. All the information has been uploaded to the virtual backpack where students can see the names of the teachers and their offered activities. So it sounds Cider Mill has a wonderful ability to harness the creative energy of 3rd through 5th graders, and I'm sure this will be great success. So,
Karen and I would pay $3 for a ticket to watch.
No? Well, it was also 2 tickets for $5, and one of them was rocket launching with Mr. Meehan. So I know that one of my daughters bought several tickets, trying to stuff the box.
So I hope we raise good money for needy families. Thank you.
Thank you. On to committee reports. Any specific committee reports for this evening?
I will just report that the restroom renovation building committee will have its first meeting in this room on Tuesday.
Thank you.
The pension and OPEB met and agreed to maintain the same investment policy.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. At this point, we move on to Policy 6141, Middlebrook School New Course Proposals, being presented by Mr. Canny and Mrs. Harris. And friends.
We're very excited to come in front of the board tonight with the results of what has been an effort longstanding over the course of over a 2-year period in looking at a redesign of our current technology education program and moving into a more 21st century orientation and looking at a program that emphasizes science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So in that regard, we're looking forward to present to you tonight a new course proposal at Middlebrook School. Secondarily, momentarily, you'll also hear from members of our Family and Consumer Science team who will be recommending to the board a modification in the course sequence in the Family and Consumer Science area over the 3 years at Middlebrook School. So with that, it's my pleasure to introduce Principal Harris and her team to present to the board tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Canty.
You're
Thank you, Dr. Richards, and members of the Board of Education. We are delighted to be here this evening to present to you the 6141 curriculum proposals. As you know, recently we've been focusing our curriculum work at Middlebrook School on the Common Core state standards in the academic area. And as Tim said, this year and in the past year, we've decided it was time to take an in-depth look at our exploratory curriculum areas, specifically the technology education program and the family and consumer science program. We reviewed the two programs to determine if they were based on the most current research and best practices in the fields. We also reviewed the two programs to determine if we were addressing the competencies outlined in our Wilton Public Schools vision of teaching and learning. And this evening we are delighted to be here with you to present our findings. And it is my pleasure to introduce Kendra Norman and Jim Abbott, who will present the proposal for this grade 6th, 7th, and 8th grade iSTEM program. Kendra is our science instructional leader, and Jim is our technology education teacher who brings a wealth of experience and enthusiasm to the table for this discussion.
And if I may, before we begin the presentation, I wanted to alert the board that part of the express needs for these course proposals involve facilities questions. And we would ask that we defer those questions until we report on facilities, which is on the board's agenda later on this evening.
Okay. Thank you for this opportunity to explain our introduction to STEM course proposals for Middlebrook. As you know, STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and math. But not since the age of Sputnik has there been a greater call for our nation's citizens to become more literate in these areas. It's not a matter of competing in the space race with Russia. It's economic competition from people all over the world, including emerging economies like India and China. Importantly, the call for improvement in these areas is not simply the 4 subject areas. STEM education refers to the integration of those areas, blurring of the traditional disciplines. STEM education emphasizes cross-cutting transferable skills and practice important to all citizens in their daily lives, and also may increase career readiness, interest, and awareness. It's estimated that STEM careers will grow at a rate of 4 times that of all other occupations in the next couple of decades. The new national science standards that we expect Connecticut will be adopting within the coming 2013 do call for all students to gain an understanding of science and engineering practices. So we believe the time is now to move forward, to move Wilton students to improve the STEM curriculum beyond science, technology, and math. So we're proposing 3 introductory STEM courses for grades 6, 7, and 8 as part of the STRIDE rotation. It's our exploratory STRIDE rotation. Each of the courses would be hands-on, activity, and problem-solving based integrated courses. They would meet for 22 class periods each. They will replace the existing tech ed program, but they'll still appeal to students who like to work with their hands in a way that would develop 21st century skills like problem solving, innovation, communication, collaboration, decision making. These are all skills that are articulated in the Wilton vision of teaching and learning. In the 6th grade, the students will begin to learn about the engineering design process, defining a problem, conducting research, generate solutions, create and test a prototype, test it out, collect data, finalize a design, remake their design. As they work together to make and test bottle rockets, mousetrap vehicles, ping pong ball launchers, for example. Then in 7th and 8th grade, students will build and program real-life robotic solutions using LEGO, Mindstorms, NXT materials and software. They'll work in teams of 2 or 3 as they learn building and programming of new robot behavior. This is truly integrated STEM, allowing for creativity of design using various devices and sensors that gather data linking cause and effect while working together to solve problems. I'm just excited just talking about it. For the school year 2013-14, the 7th and 8th grade courses would be the same because they would all be starting it. But then in the subsequent year, those 8th graders will develop their knowledge and skills further using the same materials. So that by the end of their 8th grade year, next year's 7th grade students will be able to develop prototypes of potential solutions to real problems and build and test and improve their designs. The Introduction to STEM courses would be a natural follow-up to the Models and Designs FOSS module that is part of the science curriculum at Cider Mill. We've worked with the Wilton High School science, technology, and applied arts instructional leaders, and they're on board with our proposal as well. They think it's a very exciting way to build interest in courses at the high school. This offering of integrated STEM and pre-engineering courses is kind of new at middle level, but not brand new. There are several schools in our district that are doing so. In Easton and Weston, in their middle schools, they have students doing Project Lead the Way, which is a pre-engineering curriculum. It requires more time than we have allotted, but it is a very interesting program indeed. So we're very excited about these proposals, and we really hope that we can move forward with it.
Hi, I'm Jim Abbott, and thank you for inviting me this evening. Although I have a deep passion for traditional tech ed, now is a time of passage, right down the line from President Obama to Tony Boucher. Everybody's pushing STEM. It's the wave of the future. It's skills that our kids need. It's going to improve our economy, give kids jobs down the line, and I hope they can introduce and keep as many of the beliefs in the traditional tech ed manner in the future. And I'm looking forward to Millbrook shining with iSTEM.
At this time, we welcome any of your questions or comments or observations.
Going around the table.
I think it's fabulous. I think it's a long time in coming, and much as I think Wilton will miss all the swords that were made in tech ed past years, I think it's fabulous. I think the kids it's really going to ignite a lot of passion in them, and I trust that we'll have enough to sort of harness that passion, to let them get to the next step, next level. I know that at the high school we certainly do. But I just, think it's a fabulous concept, and thank you for bringing it to us.
I had a few questions. One is, the course sounds exciting. I'm sorry that's taking place, traditional tech ed, because of reading through it, I'm struck by the different levels of ability of middle school students. And one of the things I loved about sewing and cooking and tech ed, and my own children's experiences in those, is that they all come on kind of even playing field. I mean, some kids have had experience with a hammer, some have had experience with a stove, but for the most part, I think it's an even place, and it's some place where they're all together. I do have a concern about removing that and making it, more science, technology, engineering, math. How are you going to handle different kids that they're going to have different abilities within that program, especially if they're going to be working in groups of 2 or 3, just questions like that. Also interested in how does it integrate back into science and math, and also where does it go after middle school? What is the high school with these kids once they emerge after 3 years with iSTEM? What will they do at the high school level? So those are some of my questions, which don't have to be answered on the spot.
Those are good questions.
You have a lot of good questions. In my methodology of instruction, I try to incorporate as much of the scientific method in the way that I teach, especially. I only have my kids for 21 or 22 days. but the observations section of the scientific method with quantitative and qualitative observations is a key. There's so many life skills that I teach, and making observations about daily living experiences is a skill that we all need, and we all need to use to make decisions. Decision making is a big ball game in life, and I'm sure that in iSTEM they will use observations, both quantitative and qualitative, about what they do.
In regards to the varying abilities question you brought up, I think that they will also be on a level playing field in this. They're not going to have a lot of... They've played with Legos, but that's a whole different ballgame than building a robot. So I think they're really kind of going to be all on the same playing field that way as well. So I don't have a concern for that, really. And you know, I'm an advisor for our Science Olympia team, and I'll tell you what, those 6th graders are... They don't know the first thing about building a mousetrap vehicle. Even the kids who come in there as science whizzes. So I think they're all... I don't think that's going to be an issue. The other question about integrating science and math at Middlebrook in particular, I think the kids are going to be doing science and math when they don't really realize that they're doing it.
Science and math is the language that they get, whether it's iSTEM or whether it's traditional, they get.
Yeah. But we are having them do activities that are not specifically articulated in the science curriculum, but which are still important, will help develop these skills.
At the high school level, the impact of this program could play out over time in continuing, actually, conversations we've had about the opportunity for students to experience engineering-type courses. Many of our comparable high schools have those courses in place, and typically they can either be found within a science department or within an applied arts arena. So in looking at our current offerings, certainly there may be increased pressure, not the right word, but conversations about how could students who emerge from the Middlebrook program, who have a strong interest, who are excited about these opportunities, experience either, probably through some type of elective offerings, again, either through the Applied Arts program or the Science Department, opportunities to continue this type of experience through our program. So it may very well be that down the road, as we look at a prioritization of course offerings at the high school, that we may be coming forward to the board with proposals to look at additional types of elective course experiences at the high school to meet this need.
Laura, I'd like to go back to your question about meeting the needs of all the children, because I feel strongly that the STRIVE classes are when the children are out of their academic arena and they get to, as Kendra would say, play with their hands and have fun and explore all sorts of career opportunities. So this is, as you know, the students take the classes for 22 lessons, and it's opposite their gym and their health and their family and consumer science class. So there will be time for them to sit down and build and discover and play. There won't be an academic grade attached to it. I feel very strongly that we want them to learn and explore. And again, it's an exploratory program where they learn concepts, but it will be a level playing field. I was in a PE class, and you can imagine being in a PE class with some of the children in Wilton who are so talented and play on many, many teams, and then other children who are not as mature and developed just simply because of the age level. And watching the teacher skillfully teach how to do an overhand serve with children of all these of the different physical attributes and skill levels was just fascinating, because she was so talented. She knew her children well. There was a pretest, and she taught the skills in such a way, in such a progression, that all the children were successful. And I would imagine that this course would be taught in the same way, with the same type of approach and the same kind of best practices in teaching. And that's something, as we're looking for the right person to teach this, that's what we're looking for. And it will be fun. And they may not take home swords, and they probably can't take home their robots either. But we want them to we want to develop an interest and an enthusiasm. We don't want it to be a serious course. from that, we want them to learn, but we don't want it to be overwhelming. That's important to me, too.
I went and observed Project Lead the Way in a couple of schools where kids were making robots, and they came into class and they just went and got their stuff and started working with each other. It was amazing. I was very impressed. It's just that we don't have that kind of time that program has.
Yeah, over the years we've heard from a lot of parents about a course like this, and the parents have been very excited about it. I was wondering if you've heard from the students about a course like this or an interest in this. Have the students been asking for this at all? If they wanted more challenges?
I haven't talked to any students from Middlebrook about this, and the way different towns approach it, from just my limited personal experiences, that in some high school situations, iSTEM is just for the most academically achieving kind of student. You have to have a B or an A average to take STEM courses. But we're talking about an exploratory kind of situation here, just so that the kids get a feel for what this learning experience is all about.
And although they may not have asked for it specifically, you can look at the interest at the enthusiasm in the science fair and watch them. If you come to a science fair and watch the children, they're all excited and they love sharing ideas, and most importantly, they love the science fair projects where they can work together and develop and create. And then watching the Science Olympiad team, there's an interest in that as well. So I would anticipate there will be a similar interest and enthusiasm, and it will be nice because it'll be part of their school day. It won't be something added on like a science fair.
But they all want to, in Science Olympiad, they all want to do those building events.
Yes.
Well,
The hands-on learning has been...
And why did you you didn't disregard, but you looked at Project Lead the Way, and you said it was just too long. What were some of the differences between the two programs?
Well, the main thing is, I don't know about you, but I went to Bethel and I went to Monroe, and I spent half a day at each place. And I think it's a rich curriculum. It's a canned curriculum, but actually the teachers told me there's actually more than they can do, and they have kids every day for a semester. So we're talking about every other day for a quarter. So the main thing is the time.
And
so maybe in the future, if it really catches on, we'll make a
the
difference.
teachers go to the STEM universities and colleges to learn their curriculum. That's what we mean by canned. They tell you basically lesson by lesson what you do.
You can't excerpt, you buy the whole package, as I understand it, and it's quite costly.
Quite costly and time-consuming also. The summer curriculum that I was exposed to a couple of years ago was 3 or 4 weeks during the summer to learn the curriculum, and then you go back to your school and apply it.
There are several others as well. There's something called Engineering by Design. There's something called Infinity Project from Southern Methodist University. But they all do require more time.
Very good.
Karen?
I'm excited to see this program come in. Wilton High School sends a number of children to colleges to study engineering every year. You were talking about the enthusiasm of the kids. I foresee a demand for an after-school activity in robotics or something not too far down the road.
And we hope so. We hope so. We think that's exciting.
Well, we talked, Karen, I had the pleasure, Tim and I met with Kendra, who's the science IL at Millbrook, and Jim Lucy, who's the science IL at the high school, and a group of interested science teachers. And one of the things we were talking, we touched on this very briefly, and but when you look at the high school and you look at the number of, we have for example, a forensics course, which really, in a way, the forensic science course that Mathway teaches, it really has elements of STEM in that course. But then we talked about the river research, the water research, the sound, all the opportunities for hands-on kinds of learning at the trout initiative that Jim started years ago here. So I think there will be, and perhaps some after-school related kinds of activities. But I think there's promise for what happens at the next level.
This may well compete with the Climb Club and Project Adventure. I mean, I think this will engender that kind of excitement for after-school activities and during the day.
The grease monkeys, the French fry car.
Well, first of all, I would say with the excitement of this, can we not talk you into staying another year?
Oh,
See
would
the
that-
result of this?
You'd be looking for me, and I'd be building the robots.
Okay.
with the kids and the Legos. That sounds like so much fun.
Well, I know it is fun because my oldest son, who's now a senior, got his Mindstorms kit when he was in middle school and has been doing all kinds of
Good.
robotic things with that since then. So I've seen it work and crawling across my kitchen floor,
Oh, good.
picking up things and doing all kinds of things. And I do know that Lego sponsors competitions, national competitions, and I hope that there would be opportunities for us perhaps as an after-school add-on thing to put teams
Excellent.
together that we can compete with that kind of stuff. I guess my question, though, goes back to what Gil had said earlier about the project Lead the Way and the time where these other schools are maybe devoting more time to it than what we have in our schedule. How does that set us up for possibly meeting these potential new standards that are going to come out? I mean, do you feel confident that what we're going to do will be enough, or do you think eventually we'll need to expand and add more time?
I think that, if I may, the key word here, again, as Principal Harris mentioned, is exploratory. And the nature of the STRIDE program is to, at the middle school level, provide students with a range of experiences that will help them to gain some understanding, some sense of interest in a range of opportunities. So that, again, I think it has implications more, not at the middle school level, but at the high school level, in that students who present with interest, I think, will be looking at whether it's after-school activity types of experiences or curriculum-based experiences. I see the impact more at the upper grades than perhaps at the middle school level, because you have to make a decision at some point about how you're going to use that time at the middle school level in terms of curriculum. The extent to which the core academic courses are presented. We do have a double block of English instruction at that level, which we prioritize. The opportunities to pursue coursework in art and music. There's only so many minutes in a day, so we're actually presenting the proposal in a way that fits into our prioritized scheme for the work, but I do think it will have implications on the upper grades, and never say never. You just don't quite know how this could evolve, and it may impact the middle school program at some point, but not yet.
But you feel confident that as these new standards are introduced, it sets us up to preparing the middle school kids to meet those standards.
And we'll still be
Right.
learning about engineering practices and science practices in science class as well. But so
I was
it
going to
won't
say,
substitute for teaching about engineering practices in science class.
are you referring to the Common Core?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
new Common Core as it relates to science and engineering.
I think that the opportunity that this course proposal, grades 6, 7, and 8 presents actually should be viewed as an opportunity to reinforce the skills, particularly in the area of science, as we look at new standards in the coming school year in a way that will be aligned with the Common Core work that goes beyond where we are now. So I wouldn't view it as an end-all. It's more of a reinforcer to the kinds of experiences that will be promoted in math and science instruction in the core.
Mr. Abbott, are you on board to be the instructor of this group?
I am retiring in June, and I would offer any kind of assistance I could to the person that starts this, and it is a time of passage. It really is when our kids need to learn how to experience all the challenges we meet and the everyday things they have to deal with our new world that we live in.
And Jim's wisdom from his years of experience teaching this age level in this particular course is truly evident in the work that Kendra has produced for this evening. And we appreciate all his expertise and enthusiasm for the program.
Well, I'd say, Mr. Abbott, I appreciate your service and wish you well in your retirement as well, and we'll look forward to talking to you about that in June. I have a question about ongoing costs. How will the costs of this program relate to the ongoing tech ed costs? Will there be an incremental increase in cost to run this program? Will it be about the same? Do we know yet?
Well, we know for this year there will be a substantial increase.
I'm not
for
talking about
this year.
facilities yet.
No. We know this year for the program itself, for buying, it's amazing how expensive Legos are, and the technology to go along with it, there will be a substantial increase of about $30,000, but we know that then we will have the pieces of the Legos and the programs ready to go and the technology ready to go, and we're also putting in for not an iPad cart, a laptop cart, and that will be a startup expense that we will keep with the program itself.
And then the ongoing out-year cost?
It will be comparable to the existing tech ed
Would be
program. That we
replacement parts, and over the years they might decide to do some other different project, but those pieces aren't terribly
And
expensive.
the Legos could be used over and over
Oh,
and
yeah.
over again.
I see my daughter's Flintstone car that she brought home being replaced with a mousetrap car. And
That's right.
my mice running rampant in the basement because my daughter's redesigned all the mousetraps and the
There
cats
you
going
go.
crazy chasing ping pong balls. But, other than that, this sounds wonderful. Thank you.
Thank
I think
you.
it's important for the board to recognize that in coming before you this evening, it's quite strategic. Because a week from today, we will be conducting our first workshop to discuss the budget. And there is a reality that we will need to stand in front of the community to justify the costs associated with this change in curriculum. So we're trying to give the board every opportunity to understand those costs, to be knowledgeable about the curriculum proposal as you begin your deliberations next week.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Part two.
Part two.
We now move on to
Thank you.
culinary arts.
Yes, you'll like this one.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Tim.
No, Julia knows.
Okay.
Yes.
So this
Oh, dear. Boy, that would have really been filling up here. Oh, no, we knew. Well, for our next course, and neither one of them are.
I'm not going to ask for the teacher.
That's okay. And now to present the culinary arts course, A Lifetime of Wellness, I have Janet Nobles and Jamie Peterson. Janet and Jamie are both enrolled in the Educational Leadership program at Southern, and I have the luxury of being their mentor. And this is part of their PIP, their
Professional Internship
Project, yes. Okay, I had that written down. And as part of their PIP, they have done the research for this program in collaboration with Kathy Hanna, who is the current teacher. Unfortunately, Kathy's not able to join us this evening, but we certainly have her ideas and input. And Janet is also the instructional leader for the Unified Arts team, the STRIDE team, the Exploratory Arts team. So, Janet?
Thank you for having us. As the instructional leader for the Unified Arts, I am very proud of this full exploratory program that we have at Middlebrook. And so we'd like to adopt this additional culinary arts course called A Lifetime of Wellness. And we'd be expanding the current foods program that exists in 7th grade to align with Wilton's vision of teaching and learning, as well as the American Association of Family and Consumer Science Standards for Nutrition and Wellness. The course would maintain the structure, as we spoke about with the STEM program, of 22 classes, or 1/4. The class would improve the understanding of nutritional concepts that are introduced in 7th grade health class, as well as in 8th grade science curriculum. They study the digestive system, but it would provide real hands-on food labs that will happen in a family-style kitchen, so that these terms of nutrition and wellness are given actual real life in the kitchen with preparing foods and choosing foods for a lifetime of nutrition and wellness. In terms of Wilton's vision of teaching and learning, I wanted to give you some examples of how this new course could really benefit those areas. In terms of creativity and innovation, you can imagine the students would be creating recipes and meals based on nutritional guidelines they'll be learning through myplate.gov, which if you get a chance to look at it, is a really thorough website that has all sorts of interactive work the kids can do. They can track the foods they eat and the nutrition they're receiving through those foods. It's really fantastic and has a lot of teaching materials available. In terms of communication and collaboration, again, they'd be working in a family kitchen in groups of 4 or 5 children where they'd play different roles within that. So that would really foster that collaboration. For research and information, again, using myplate.gov, as well as researching about how to shop for foods, how to plan meals, work with a budget, read labels and recipes, and learn how to work and use those well. In terms of critical thinking and problem solving and decision making, it's exciting because we can give the children in a group a recipe and have them solve a problem with it. Now you're going to be serving this recipe to a family that needs to be gluten-free, that needs to be nut-free. How can we adapt to this recipe to work for this family? Or perhaps, here are these 3 ingredients that have to be in your meal today. What's a recipe you could create to come up with those, use those food products? Global awareness and citizenship. I think just in part of being a family kitchen, using your energy efficient appliances. How do you use water without wasting water? The use of chemicals in cleaning and in cooking. About organic farming, proper recycling habits, things that you do to run a responsible kitchen at home. All of these things are addressed that really cover all the areas of Wilton's vision of teaching and learning. So clearly, I think the skills in this course really address the skills that our kids need today. We had an opportunity, as Kendra was talking about, to visit some other schools and see that many schools do still have traditional sewing and cooking classes. We visited specifically Richfield and Weston and had a chance to observe there, to interview the teachers there. We also had some time to go to Wilton High School and see the culinary arts program there and how that's structured, which really showed us a lot. It was very interesting. So we see that Darien and Greenwich also have similar programs. So this really seems to take the program we have and bring it to the next level of bringing it to this lifetime of skills they'll be able to use for a lifetime of wellness. So I'm really excited about the course content. If I was telling Julia that I love teaching music, but I got so excited about this curriculum, I was like, what would it take to get the certification for this? Because I think it's really dynamic and fun. So I would look forward to having my child do this in 8th grade.
Sing for your supper.
Exactly. Yes. So I welcome your questions?
If I may, before questions, just to be clear with the board, the restructuring of the course sequence, then students will continue with sewing in grade 6 as part of the exploratory program. Then they move into the culinary experience in grade 7. And the team determined that a follow-up experience to that grade 7 course was appropriate. The students currently have a follow-up experience in sewing in grade 8. So we're going to replace that with the culinary experience, which, again, a follow-up to grade 7, parallels other curriculum areas in the grade 8 program, and then does set the stage for students going to the high school, now having 2 required experiences in Middlebrook in grade 7 and 8, into an elective program at the high school that is generating great interest and enthusiasm. So I just wanted to make sure the board was clear about that, and also to remind the board that we'll be talking later in our presentation about some facilities-related questions that relate to this proposal.
And one of the things...
Thank you for that explanation.
Because that was my question.
Yeah, exactly my question.
Well,
Back to 1970s.
when you propose new curriculum, you often ask for student input, and it took no time at all to determine that the 7th graders would much prefer to cook and eat than to sew.
Well,
when they became 8th graders, they could
The 8th
walk in
graders,
and smell the
they walk into the kitchen and it smells good already from the period before them, so they want to do more. Okay.
So they're still doing sewing in 6th
Sixth
grade,
grade.
and then now 2 years of the culinary arts
Yes.
wellness.
Mm-hmm.
And the sewing in 6th grade aligns with what the other Durgay districts are doing.
And then you still get, as you said, Julia,
The hands-on.
The hands-on.
manipulatives, which is so
Yes.
important at this age. And they could still use the skills, sewing a button that never goes out of style. That's really, nowadays, that's all you need to know. But I think this is all very exciting as well. And I was wondering how I could sign up and do this. Because I could use some of those skills myself.
Wilton Continuing Education.
There you go.
Karen?
Which also uses that space, right?
Yes.
I'd just like to know a little bit more about the curriculum, because this isn't you're designing this from taking from different places and putting it together? So it's our own curriculum. We're not taking
We're not taking Summit's curriculum. That we've taken the nutrition and wellness standards from the American Association of Family and Consumer Sciences, and we've been aligning them with Wilton's vision of teaching and learning to come up with what we have so far of the document to base the curriculum on.
And choices were made to provide a scope and sequence that would address the unique needs of the Wilton students.
Right.
For example, we don't study, as Janet said, allergies. You know, what does that mean, and how do you prepare food for students who have allergies? And as we're seeing more of those in our school, it's nice for the students to have the foundation, the scientific foundation and understanding of what those are and what they entail in a family kitchen.
Chris?
I have to say I'm questioning whether or not Wilton needs something like this. Given that we just heard from iSTEM that there's so many great things we could be doing in engineering, math, science, that we don't have time for. You know, you talk about like a family kitchen. Well, look, we have a family kitchen in our house. Like you talk about teaching the kids the difference between soda and water. Don't our kids already get that at home? You know, I hate to be the naysayer party pooper, but given how precious the school day is and the minutes in the school curriculum, you know, before we add a course that the kids want, are we sure we're giving them what they need?
Well, I think that, should I address this question?
Absolutely.
Okay. Love to. Love to, actually.
Yeah, I mean, Jen, I think you know where I'm coming from. Like, you know, in Wilton, Connecticut, I think most children are getting a lot of this already at home. You know,
I actually don't believe that's true. I think they may be fed the correct foods, but do they know why or how they're prepared? And I think that very much is not the case. I don't think kids in Wilton are very prepared and are taught at home about food preparation. I don't think they're taught all these fruits contain vitamin C. Which is the one that has the most? Which is the one you like the most? If we take a grapefruit and an orange and a clementine and I'm running out, but you get my idea. What are the ways we can prepare them? Which ones are the best at which times? How can you prepare this in a way that it'll be palatable to you? They all know that spinach is good for them, but do they know how to prepare spinach in a way that will please themselves, their guests, their friends? I think it's a way to make what we know. I mean, when I studied cooking back in the day, we didn't have this awareness of wellness and nutrition. And obviously, I need to learn a lot still as a mom about the way I feed my children. And a lot of moms that I speak to have that problem of, oh, my kid won't eat that. Oh, I know that's good for them, but they're not going to eat that. They're not going to eat this. They only like the kid-friendly foods. So I think teaching kids how to make the foods that are good for them a part of their daily life and how to prepare them and how to work them into their lifestyle, I think is really important.
You know, to Chris's point, and maybe this will help clarify, I guess it would help to understand what's the difference in this curriculum versus what they're getting in 7th grade. Because I'm wondering, like, to your point, could we just move this to 7th grade or make this the 7th grade class and then
I think that's a great question.
So
In 7th grade, it's really an introduction to cooking. They're learning how do you keep a sanitary kitchen, which honestly is one of the most important things you need to know in having a family kitchen, is how to keep it clean, how to keep what you use different tools for, what the kitchen tools are in order to bake something, what needs to be in the recipe, what do you need to do with the oven in order to keep foods safe, how long do they have to be refrigerated, what can be frozen, what can't, all those. They're learning the basics about food preparation. It's really more of a science exploratory course where they're taking those tools, working with them, and learning those skills of how to do a food lab, if you will, speaking in science terms. And then in 8th grade is more about how to plan to have food, to use food as your source of nutrition and wellness for your life. It's taking, I think, a totally different spin on things and teaching them about choices and how to make those choices in a healthful and delicious way.
So it's actually 2 classes that build on...
One would build
so
upon the
you
next.
skip the one. And
So you're going to assume at the beginning of 8th grade you might need to obviously remind or review at the beginning, but let's start from where we left off, and now let's take these skills and run with them.
As you might suspect, I view the question as in a broader sense. Certainly, it's very important to reflect on our use of time and the extent to which we prioritize those opportunities for students to experience what we feel are essential learning experiences in their day. We actually, in terms of process, our team spent many sessions over the course of the planning time period talking about this very issue around the extent to which do we have an obligation as part of our curriculum experience in this 21st century world in which we live to provide students with an opportunity to really gain better understanding of these wellness questions, to augment our health curriculum so that students emerge from the middle school experience having developed some competency and skills and an understanding of nutrition and how that relates to their experience as they move through the upper grades. It's important to recognize that this is a one-time opportunity, that once students arrive at the high school, it's an elective program. And although these topics are certainly reinforced through our health program, there was a decision made that a second-year opportunity, and what in effect is a 22-session program in each grade level, was important. Now, in saying that, I think in my role, we do need to be reflective and monitor how well this works. We need to evaluate the opportunity that this course presents to our students, and we may make a determination down the road that we can consolidate and condense the work into a single-year experience, and then maybe look at other opportunities. So I think you raise an important question. We just think this is the best approach right now. It's important to recognize that when the student feedback on this question came when we made our decision. We just thought it important to find out, hey, are you going to be okay with this? But that was the process in which we garnered their feedback.
Well, was there a second 8th grade iSTEM class that you would like to integrate? If in a perfect world you could?
Well, it may be down the road that we might make a decision about broadening the iSTEM experience and using this time as part of 8th grade. But that will be for the next principal to consider.
And we also are required to address the standards.
Yeah, that's another
I mean,
piece.
there's the standards piece that we need to address in a course. So I think this course does build on the 7th grade course. And in 7th grade, I've been in classes where they learn to read labels, and they actually take things that they're eating in the cafeteria and look at the nutritional value of what's in something they're eating for lunch. Now they're learning to take that information and actually prepare food that they like and that they will eat and share with others. So it's an application, and it's not just for 8th grade, it's not just for those 22 classes, it's for the rest of their lives when they're in situations where they're preparing food and planning for themselves and learning about organic food. I mean, I don't think we have that in our curriculum anyplace else. What is it? Is it...
Many students don't even know what the difference is or how that applies.
Not even a real definition of organic.
No. And that's something to explore and to contemplate.
But just learning to read a label and to see how much sugar and sodium is in prepared foods is an important skill.
Is sewing and culinary arts taught by the same teacher?
Yes.
Yes.
Would it be possible at some point in the future to consider moving culinary arts to 6th and 7th grade and then recapturing that sewing time to expand the 8th grade iSTEM program? So it's something you could look at?
It's a possibility. We just need to be careful that we're addressing the standards that are our obligation to present to students.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Or does that come to the...
Well,
It's the family consumer science standard.
And we,
So you'd have to sew the buttons on the dish towels.
I was about that.
Any other questions before we let these good folks go? Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
At this point, we move on to the educational technology report being presented by Mr. Hepburn.
Good evening, everybody. It's always a pleasure to address the board. I always think of the fall technology report as sort of the State of the Union. So we really try and do two things in the report, and my presentation here is really just the highlights of the report. So the three things obviously are where are we, what do we need, and what's our plan? Now obviously this is a strategic move to have this week, as we will be beginning our budget discussions next week. So where are we in terms of teaching and learning and how we're supporting teaching and learning with technology? Well, I'm really excited and pleased to be able to report that right now at K-8, pre-K-8, we have a smart board and projector mounted in every academic classroom. And that is through a favorable budget, the generosity of the PTAs, and the generosity of the Wilton Education Foundation. And that has been a long journey, as you know, and we're really excited. And as you read through the report, you saw that a lot of the efforts towards professional development are leaning towards the smart board still. And you may feel like this is a long way, but for some teachers, this year is that first year on that journey for them. So we have to recognize that we still have a ways to go with our professional development. Another highlight of this section is at the high school, we now have wireless throughout every academic classroom. The gym, the field house, the Clune Center, so we really have wireless everywhere, and that allows us to really transform the way we deliver instruction. And also because of the favorable budget, we've been able to invest in some mobile devices, iPad carts, that we can take advantage of the wireless. So it really is an exciting time. After a number of kind of lean years, it was nice to have a budget year where we really could make the investment, and we're seeing some dividends paid. To that end, no technology really is effective without professional development and how you plan. And one of the things we really started to do this year, and it kind of started in the spring of last year, is think differently. Think differently about what is important to teach. And you know that we reworked Whittles, and we turned that into our vision of teaching and learning, which actually stripped the technology away, but really began to get us to focus on what is the instructional experience, the how we teach. How do we make that so we engage students? If you remember, Al, in November, came and presented at our keynote address. And one of the things he talked about is students having a natural curiosity, a passion for learning, and that somehow our educational system becomes boring and it sucks that passion away. Through the November Learning Institute, our work with as a staff development committee, really district-wide, and our team of instructional leaders who went to the ISTE conference, we really began to think differently about how we deliver it. And so, Alan always wants to know, how do you create impassioned, hardworking, driven students? Those of you who are fans of Daniel Pink's work will know exactly autonomy. To what degree does your instructional design cause students to have to solve things for themselves, rather than you telling them how to solve the problem and you telling them what the answer is? Mastery. Students have a natural desire to master content, and that actually motivates them to learn. And the last one is purpose. Purpose. The idea that your learning and your instruction matters. It has a purpose beyond, I have to do it because my teacher told me. Now, I'm about to introduce our instructional leader team, and they're going to give some short presentations which will really illustrate the kind of work that we've been doing, and it's very powerful work. They are an incredible group of educators, not just technology people, but if you've had the privilege of having one of them as the teacher of your child, you realize how exceptional educators there are. So I'm going to introduce Brian Ennis, first grade teacher from Miller Driscoll, Jason Greasley, fifth grade teacher from Cider Mill, and Tim Lai, social studies teacher from 8th grade. I got that. So I'm going to start with Brian. And Brian's going to show you how he has transformed the way he teaches as a result of this professional development.
Hello, everyone. Okay. Like Matt said, we've had a lot of professional development with the support of our administration at Miller Driscoll. We really sat down as a grade level and as a building and said, how can we start to transform some of this? I'm one of the pioneers because I'm a technology instructional leader, so I've been trying a few of these. Every week I do a little writing assignment on Monday, weekend news, where the students come in, we talk about it, we build a sense of community. And if you've ever taught primary, you know that a first grade student, when they walk in to the classroom and you ask them, what did you do over the weekend? I didn't do anything. I stayed at home. I didn't do anything. All right. And what I used to do is I had students at home with their parents write up on just a quick little sticky note, 2 or 3 bullets on what they did when they came in. We started to form sentences and, do everything else in our curriculum that we do in first grade. And after listening to Alan November, he Skyped a woman from Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. All of our students in first grade, they have a blog. We were at our meeting, and Dr. Richards, you were there with us with Weston. It was our first day. And I posed a question to her. I said, what can I bring back to my building? What's one thing, with all the digital tools out there, what can I bring back to our building? And she said, well, I would blog. That's the first thing I would do, is I would blog. That's the easiest thing to do. There's so many safe, secure blogs out there. I would blog. So that's what I did. I sat there, came back, I wrote up a little newsletter to the parents and sent it out and said, here's what we're going to do. Don't, a lot of criteria, don't use your name and everything else. And, well, this is just a screenshot of some of my walls right here that I have up already. But I have linked my most recent weekend news. And each student, well, I can't move that down. Each student has a number in my class. And over the weekend, they post it. I approve it. I have full editing rights. They'll say, I went to my sister Susie's birthday party. I'll go in, I'll change that. Just said, I went to a birthday party. I approve it all. Before I did this, I had 1 out of 19 students send back a little post-it note every Monday. My first time I did this, I had 14 out of 19, and now I'm consistently right around 15. And a few others, I'll get a little email from the mom, say, I can't get it in there today. I'm sorry, or here's a quick little blurb, and then I'll do it. As you can see, number 2, I went to my grandma's house on Saturday afternoon. I put up my Christmas tree and ornaments on Sunday. I celebrated Hanukkah with my cousins. You name it. Number 18, I watched a movie, Catch That Kid. I played outside. And it builds a sense of community. We talk about it. I put it up there on the smartboard during our writing time at that point. I model my weekend news. I happened to be sick this past weekend, so I didn't put anything up, and I told them that. I was like, I was sick. And they said, well, when they told me that I didn't do anything, I said, well, if I call mom or dad right now, they would say, you did nothing. You stayed in your bed the whole time. And they all laughed. Well, when I said I did nothing, they said, well, if we call Mrs. Ennis. So I said she would verify my story there. So you can see that they do it throughout the weekend. Number 15 did it twice. She did a little piece earlier on the day, and then later on she did that. I have weather experiments up there, extension to our weather cups. Maria remembers that. Our weather cups when we plant our beans. We don't plant the beans anymore. We do the water in the water cycle. Mr. Canty came in and read a story. We did a book review with Mr. Canty when he was there as well. But this is just something that I do. It's quick. It's easy. I do it all the time now. And it's all safe, secure. I send the link. You can't search it. And I even posed a question this in November. When we were at our last session with him, I said, go ahead and Google that and try to find Mr. Ennis's walls here, and he couldn't do it. But it's a little something that I do.
And thank you, Brian. I'm going to introduce our next guest is Jason Greasley, 5th grade teacher. and he will be describing what is called a legacy project.
Good evening, everybody. As Matt said, I'm Jason Greasley. I teach 5th grade down in Cider Mill, Cannondale House, so I have a couple of parents I recognize on the board. Basically, my project, the takeaway that I had from the Allen November conference was he instilled an idea of a legacy. When I thought about that at first, I thought, well, legacy, I understand what that is, and I talked to a couple of high school students that are at the conference. I said, you guys leave a high school sort of project, a gift to the years to come, to sort of remember you by. And so I kind of took that concept and applied it to the classroom. And the idea behind this is if we take a curriculum area, in this case we used grammar to do that, have the kids build a legacy, do a project where they're leaving it for years to come. So the idea behind this is they took on an area of grammar and they built a tutorial where students in future years will be able to come in and view this, and then the idea behind it is they will watch this and then add to what they've already done from previous years. The screenshots you see here are students actually working in collaboration with each other. They were put into teams of 2. The teams were sort of randomly generated. And the nice thing about this is once the students were given their concept, it was up to them to go and learn the piece of grammar that they were given. There was no teaching on my end. The idea was they go out and learn it so they can teach others. And so what I'd like to show you is just a little video clip of what some of the students put together based on that concept. So try and pull one up here.
I'm going to teach you how to use commas. Commas are used in letters, like this one. Dear Nusha, could you teach me how to use commas? Sincerely, Olivia. Commas are also used in the date. For example, the date is December 5th, 2012. Commas are used in many different ways. Here's another letter. Dear Olivia, this is how you use commas. They can be used in cities and locations. For example, we live in Wilton, Connecticut. Commas are also used in complex sentences. For example, today it snowed, so school was delayed. Sincerely.
Who did that?
Click on the bubble to extend the passage. Drag it over to the correct hole. Go ahead and play.
So they actually play the game for you. I'm going to pause it there. But what they decided to do is incorporate a game feature into their program. And so they came up with the uses of the commas and the correct use versus incorrect, and you pretty much take it and slide it into the right area. Again, they thought that was an important part to help reinforce the concepts of what they taught. So what I found interesting is them taking this idea that they've been given, owning it, learning it, building a tutorial, and then actually having the watcher of the tutorial try it on their own. And there's other examples kind of that are similar to this. And
know how to use commas.
hopefully what you see from that example is that it is very much kid-based, grades appropriate, and I thought the way they interacted and spoke. And the one takeaway for me was I had groups of students come to me and say that they were speaking to each other outside of the classroom. That was not asked by me at all. And I said, well, how did you do that? They said, well, we picked up the phone and we Skyped each other instant messages. And I thought that was amazing that they took that on their own shoulders without any asking of me. So that's kind of a little piece of what we did for the Allen November piece.
Jason, what program was that created in?
You know what? The kids were given different abilities or programs to use. So we actually used Notebook, the software from the Smartboard Notebook, to build that one. But I had some students use a flip camera to tape, and they did it sort of as an interview, like a newscaster, if you will. Some other examples in there that did that. So their approach was very different, which was another nice piece.
And so now how do you plan to use this next year?
So next year what I'm going to do is these are all loaded to my website. The students next year will come in and watch these, and then they're going to be sort of given the task, can you take what you've seen and make it better, or add to this? So again, leaving that idea of a legacy and building on it.
And the other piece of a legacy project is last year's students, should they feel like going back and seeing Mr. Griese's class, might go in and want to redo their own. And they've actually found incidences where teachers have engaged in a project like this, and students come back and repost something 4 years later about something that they learned, because they want that legacy when people think about their name is having it really nailed it right. So it's a really interesting concept, and you see how engaged the students become. And trust me, I taught 5th grade for a long time. Kids do not get excited about grammar.
Not at all. It's so true.
I don't think that matters how old you are.
Yeah. The other piece, the reason I chose grammar is over the years, grammar's been a weak area from our CMT results. Our plan now is to kind of take this and have the students build in like sentence combining and how to do that. And so kind of bring that piece into it too. Thank you.
Thank you. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our next guest, and that is Tim Lai, grade 8 social studies.
Thank you, Matt. Matt said I'm 8th grade social studies in Middlebrook. And I had a similar take back as Jason did from our Allen November meetings, and that was the idea of legacy and also the idea of having students own the learning, having them create something that's more meaningful to them. And so this year a unique opportunity was presented to me. Every year we've been going to Philadelphia as an 8th grade team, and it works with the civics unit that I teach. And this year our field trip was a little bit earlier than usual, so I had only about a week to prep them on civics before we went on the trip, which I was really worried about, that they would be wondering when they were down there, why are we here, what is the connection? So I tried to tackle that problem using what I learned from Allen November. And in previous years I had the students fill out a packet, a scavenger hunt, which I thought would be exciting because I thought they were interesting questions, but it never seemed to be exciting to the kids. And every year it rained, which was a perfect excuse for it to dissolve. So I decided this time I would give them a task when they were down there, and that was they would all be in some way an investigator, and to find information about the historic sites, and to take it back with them, and working together we would create websites. Websites that would teach other classrooms that from around the country about historic Philadelphia and how they could take their classes there on a field trip. And what was a little bit different in the past, I've had students build websites in the past, but usually it's been small groups, maybe up to 5. But I actually asked all 24 students of mine in one class to create one single website, everybody working together. So I divided up the class into different roles based upon their interests. There were 2 project managers who basically were sort of the teachers who led this development of what the website would look like. A handful of technologists who would actually build the site using Google Sites. Some historians who would go down there and they would come back to write paragraphs about each of these historic sites to put on the website. Reporters who would go down with flip cameras and iPhones, whatever technology that they either had or checked out from the media center, and interview the park rangers there, questions that they had prepared in advance. Podcasters who were there would create walking tours of the various sites. I'm walking through Independence Hall, look to your left, you see this, look to your right, you see that. And educational resource designers who would create better packets than I had created in the past. And so I have here the instructions, which are very simple. And I never done this before, so it was sort of an experiment. And I was very pleased with the results. I can show you each of the class created a very different looking website because there were such broad criteria. This is one period that created a link for each of the different locations. And on a location like the Liberty Bell, they compiled the historian's paragraph, the reporter's interview, and then a fun crossword puzzle that people could do at the Liberty Bell. I'll play for just a few seconds, show you the video here of four unsuspecting.
How did the Liberty Bell get to Philadelphia?
It was cast.
Not sure why it's not
First
on
one
video right now.
was cast in London in 1751. Came over here, and the first time they used it, it broke.
And so each of these different sites here, they have all that material on each site. And I can show you just another website from another class just so sort of how different it looked from their format. This was a separate period of the day. And they made a little bit more perhaps stylistic website, although didn't have a Bruce Springsteen song on the front page about Philadelphia. And they grouped theirs by category. The history paragraphs on one page, the reporters' interviews and walking tours on one page, and again, all of the movies, the recordings that they had done with the park rangers, and then the educational resources, and then their audio history tours. And I must say, this had a big impact on us being down here on the trip. That initially, I was very worried, again, about it not being a meaningful trip, but I was very impressed by how engaged they were. And I've been on this trip for 6 years, and the first time ever, unfortunately, this didn't happen on the bus in the group that I was with, but so I wasn't there to experience it, but a group of our students were given a certificate from Independence Hall, from the park ranger there, that they very rarely give out to students, but they give it out if they have great questions and they're really well behaved. And so they brought that back, and we're very proud to have that displayed up on 8 Red. So I was very excited about this. I plan to use this in future years, maybe show this to my future students next year and say, hey, this is what we made last year, what can we do different, how can we build on this and improve this as we go to Philadelphia again. So no more packets for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, our high school instructional leader is unable to be with us tonight. Unfortunately, she is recovering from surgery, so I know we all wish her well. But I feel strongly, because I'm so excited about her project, that I'm going to present her project to you. And what Amy's takeaway is the student-centered classroom. And Amy's classroom already is very student-centered, but she really decided, as a result of the experience at ISTE and the work with Al November, to take it up to the next level. And so she has always had a programming class, but she decided to try a programming class called Scratch that she did not know. And the idea is, Scratch is made by MIT, and it really scratches the surface of programming. And it was the opportunity for her to learn along with her students. What you have here in Scratch, they almost look like little digital Legos. They snap together. And the idea of Scratch is to create an animation. You're making your own cartoon. And it's really experiential problem-solving, problem-based learning. You snap your motions and your backgrounds and your audio together, and you create a video, then you play it, and I didn't want it to do that, and then you have to go back and reprogram, which is exactly what programmers do in code, but usually they're copying and pasting code. It takes the actual coding away. The extraordinary thing about it is how quickly the students take to it, and that there's a share button on it, because Scratch is made to be a social programming tool. So you share your videos and your animations with the rest of the world. So you might get a high school student in Spokane, Washington, and you might be sharing bits of code and your ideas with them and get your own ideas. As you might imagine, very quickly, Ms. Corn's students became better than she was at the program. But the real exciting part is the engagement that they have. I'm going to share you just a little bit of one. It's actually kind of funny. I don't know if you can read this. It says, "Hey Dan, can you help me with my math homework?" "Sure, what do you need help with?" "Thanks Dan, I need help with factoring." "Okay, let's go to the blackboard." It's my favorite part of the cartoon. "Dan, man, you walk funny." So I'm going to pause us here. And Dan goes on to explain how to factor. So you see that students actually took the opportunity. They're making a cartoon, but they actually used it to benefit someone else. They actually used it for factoring. She did not ask for that, but it's really based on student interest. The real next level thinking that Ms. Korn has with this is that as a result of working with Alan, he said, younger kids can pick up this. So after a discussion with Alan that she pulled him aside during a little break, he said, well, why don't you start a club? So Amy and the middle school have decided to start an after-school club where the high school students will be teaching the middle school students how to use Scratch. I think it's probably going to lead to a little unintended consequence of students coming up to Mrs. Corn's class in a few years who already know the program, and she will have the interesting problem of really challenging them to lift up their programming skills. So it's real exciting. And again, it's that student-centered classroom, a little bit of a legacy project, and again, the students as teachers. I know we have to kind of shift gears here with the tech report, but part of our strategic plan is communication. It's how we use our website and our other tools. Our primary tools are PowerSchool and our website. And I'm pleased to report that we continue along our journey of becoming better at using the different features of our website and using the different features of PowerSchool. An example for our websites is the way we've been using eBlast. The PTAs and the schools have really picked up on this, becoming strategic. Ginny will routinely just target the third grade parents, and she can now e-blast all the third grade parents. The exciting news about PowerSchool for the board members who have high school students is that we had our first digital report card, and honor roll certificates were emailed out, and there was no paper, there was no folding, there were no stamps, there were no hours and hours of folding and
Except I had to print my own honor certificate.
Yes, there is that.
I had a digital signature versus a real one.
It was a real signature at one point.
I'm being picky. I was happy to get an honor certificate, so I'm not complaining.
In terms of our administrative use, we're really using the same programs, but I'd like to make a little nod to our new HR director. When Jane came in, she really thought about how can we use our technology to become more efficient, to become better at what we do. And a real prime example, a highlight of that, is Jane had the employee access portal, which we always had to us, but she really opened it up. This is my employee access page, and what it allows you to do when you log in, right now you're able to see your demographic information and your attendance history. Now you say, oh, well, it's a big deal. Well, in the old days, if you needed to change your address, or if you got married and you changed your name, you had to go fill out a piece of paper, come to the office and get a piece of paper and fill it out with a pen and then submit it to HR, and they had to manually enter it in. Now you can log in anywhere in the world with an internet connection, submit your request for your change, and the HR department can electronically make those changes. And the ability to review your own attendance as opposed to sending an email and having them print out the attendance report in their office, mail to you. Big steps, and real simple steps, too. In terms of where we are with our infrastructure, as you know, two kind of highlights of this are the wireless that we have 100% at the high school, and we have at every library, media center, and office in the other schools. And, of course, the work that Ken, Brian McDonald, and I have participated in helping the Town Network Committee finally come to a conclusion that they want to go forward with the proposed bonding project that I think will really support the schools and the town and the library and really make us a real community resource with our technologies. So real exciting progress. And now we're going to get into the needs. So we'll kind of go over how we arrive at our needs. We'll talk about the building needs and our computer replacement cycle. Obviously, when we're thinking about building our needs in preparation for our budget season, we're really thinking about how we use the technology. There's no point in just getting technology just to get it. So the first two bullets are really related. You can't just get the technology. You need to make sure it's being used properly. And all of that is reflected in our building priorities, our 3-year plan for instructional technology, and our strategic plan for technology. We've seen this slide. This is sort of a summary of all those bullet point pages. And you'll notice that there have not been drastic changes and those kind of subtle changes, but as you understand, those bullets derive from our 3-year plan. So it is a 3-year plan. So some of those priorities and needs that we have at the individual buildings are fairly common from year to year. At the district level, we need to, as a result of the Blum-Shapiro report, really think about our disaster recovery and our infrastructure. At the schools, smartboard use, RTI Studio, you'll see as we start going into our plan, RTI Studio is how we think about student data and how we think about data as it applies to instruction. It's going to become more important next year because we're going to have a new teacher evaluation plan. I don't know if you've had a chance to read the state statute on the teacher evaluation plan, but you must have student learning objectives and you must have it supported by data. So it will be real important for us to make sure that we train everybody on whatever tools we're using currently, which is RTI Studio, and whatever tools we're going to get to manage the process of our evaluation plan. What you see here is, again, another slide that you kind of see every year. This is very common. It's our computer replacement cycle. There are real no surprises. The cycle, what we are requesting to cycle in is the 13-14 line. What I would like to note to the board, a bit of a change over the past kind of year and a half. In the 2010-11 deployment, we virtualized a portion of our computers. What we have found in years 3, 4 here is that they've become unstable, and we've had to actually kind of unvirtualize them. So we've had to shift some computers and actually spend some money to unvirtualize some of those computers because it was really impacting, particularly at Middlebrook, the instruction and at the high school. And if you have a lab and the lab becomes not functional, it becomes a very big problem very fast. But the good news is this whole chart, we're going to be thinking in the near future, when we get to our plans, our infrastructure plans, we're going to be thinking very differently 2 years and 3 years out about how we replace computers. You will see that our need for this large of a 376, 375 computer replacement is going to diminish in the future based on our plan. So what are the plans? So what are we preparing? We'll kind of review our infrastructure plans, the effect on teaching and learning and professional learning. As I mentioned before, we're going to take that chart is going to look differently, and the main part of this is going to be about a virtualization project which is going to start. Our plan is to start it this year by virtualizing our servers. Obviously, wireless, we want to continue our journey, and we want to work. Our plan is to have Middlebrook go from having hotspots to be complete wireless next year. And that is in accordance with our 3-year plan. For board members who do not know what virtualization is, I'm going to give a very brief explanation. Right now, if you were to go straight below where your chairs are, we have a server farm which has 17 servers. And that manages our entire computer network. So there's might be a server for Middlebrook, for the high school. There might be one for the finance department, for payroll, for the world language department. Each has their own server. And they're backed up, but if the Middlebrook server goes out of service, Middlebrook is down in terms of their network resources. So if Mrs. Harris is trying to get something that she has stored on the network, she cannot get it until we're able to repair that. That could be a matter of hours. It could be a day. If it's a part that we have to order from HP, it could be up to half a day from the time we have a 6-hour guarantee to get the part, but we also have to install it. And then, So it could be a day and a half before Mrs. Harris is able to get to her files. What virtualization does is it replaces these 17 machines with a big kind of beefed up server and a storage array. So now, if Mrs. Harris's server goes down, within 5 minutes, a virtual copy of it will go over on this server. So we're essentially replacing 17 servers with 2 that are constantly backing each other up. Then we can take a look at this machine, or even just this segment of this machine that's housing the Middlebrook server, repair it, get it back up. Nobody will really know that anything happened. It's better for recovery. It's better for continuity of our business. And virtualized servers are much easier to back up outside. Now, back to that computer cycle. This is a year 1 piece of the puzzle. Year 2, once you have this storage memory array, you can expand that and do what they call virtualizing the desktop. And what that would mean is essentially when you log into the network, you don't log into that computer right in front of you. You're actually logging into the server farm. And what that means is it doesn't matter what device you log in with, you just need an internet connection, and you will be running Microsoft Word or CAD software or the Sibelius software on whatever device you are. You don't have to install it on that computer. In fact, you don't even need a computer. You can do it on an iPad. You can get all of your network resources on any device. What that means is we won't need to replace computer with computer 100%. Some computers will be able to replace with what are called thin clients, which are, as opposed to a computer, which might be about $800, a thin client is typically around $200. So the other thing we can do is keep using our equipment no matter how old it is, basically until it dies off warranty. We don't have to continually cycle the equipment. So it's a strategic plan, and it will really get us out of those years of big computer cycles.
I'm assuming that those 2 servers are going to be a different location?
Those are not, but what that affords us to be able to do, especially if the town fiber network goes through, is take 3 of our servers that we'll be retiring and use them to back up the entire network offsite.
Today there isn't one. Do we have a backup today?
We do have a backup today, and right now our backup is in the server farm. So the only danger we have is if there's a fire or an explosion or a flood down beneath us. Everything is backed up multiple ways. I'm working right now with the tech directors of Richfield and Weston to work with the state to see if we have an opportunity at no cost to be able to share that backup equipment, house it in Weston, and be able to use the Connecticut Education Network to back it up. But it's a grant, and we've applied for the grant. In terms of the projects, you'll see, again, not going to see anything that's going to surprise you. We're continuing along the journey that we've begun for the past 3 or 4 years, equipping classrooms with digital tools, making sure that we are equitably distributing that equipment. Obviously, wireless at Middlebrook is a big piece of that. In terms of our professional learning, we're going to need to make sure we support the new teacher evaluation plan. There will be a technology component to it to manage the system, to manage the observations, and obviously how we look at data for student learning. As we get more and more iPad carts to take advantage of the wireless, we need to make sure that we understand how to manage the iPad carts. It's actually a little bit more tricky than you would imagine. And probably most important to me is that we support our technicians. We have greatly increased the amount of technology we have. We have not increased our technical staffing. And our technicians now have to manage, in addition to the computers, projectors, smart boards, clickers, document cameras, iPads, I'm probably forgetting something, but they are really very much at capacity for their ability to manage all of this equipment. So we need to make sure that we support them. And now I will be happy to take your questions and your thoughts on technology.
Chris, start with you. Laura? Joe?
BYOD. How's it going?
Yes, that's my question.
We have noticed that students have a lot of their own equipment. The experience has been very positive. It's not been systematic to the degree that we have not tried to go to one-to-one and force students to bring them in, but it's been a natural progression. The anecdotal evidence I have from the high school is it does depend on the teacher. Some teachers really will say, hey kids, take out your iPhones, let's look this up, boom, boom. I see the library is filled with students taking advantage of the wireless. So whatever projects they're working on, if they want to use their own equipment, they're certainly bringing it, because it's not just the computer banks here that are filled, it's the tables filled with the students' own equipment.
And security. You solve that at the server level, not at the laptop. You don't have to do anything to their device.
Right now, when you log in, you're only getting internet, so we are not allowing access. When we move to the virtualized desktop in a couple of years, the beauty of that is you don't have to worry about security, because all they're doing is logging into the desktop. They're operating on the server. There is no virus that can go through that way.
Eventually, that'll probably reduce the number of computers you need to buy.
Yes. That was my point.
What do you do with students who don't have devices? Because there are some of those in the district.
Well, we do have a considerable amount of equipment. So, what I believe is that the teachers really plan how they're using the technology. So, for example, at Middlebrook, if they're doing something where the expectation is everyone is going to research and type something up in Google Docs, they're going to check out the laptop card so that everyone has a piece of equipment. Now, if a kid brought their own laptop, they're not going to stop them at Middlebrook. But I don't believe that a teacher is going to plan that without planning in the technology that we have. We're not there yet where we can make an assumption. I think once we have wireless everywhere, we're going to reevaluate that and maybe start doing a survey and see what people have and what people are willing to do. And then do we start redesigning our curriculum towards a one-to-one environment? I don't know, but that's a decision that needs to really come from the principals and how they design the curriculum that best suits the needs of their students. So that's not something that would really come from me. I would obviously support it and make sure the infrastructure supports it, but it's really needs to come from the senior leadership.
No questions, but I want to thank you for inviting the instructional leaders to show us what they're doing, because it's good for us to see. We make these investments in professional development, and it's good to see it at work in the classroom.
And what I would say about them, and I'm not trying not to embarrass them, but all of them are so respected in their buildings. They are all approachable. They share everything. If Brian makes a great smartboard lesson, it's immediately out to every first grade teacher. They can just take it and use it. They don't have to create anything themselves. And you see and feel that respect if you ever have the ability to walk around during a professional development day. I watched Tim teach smartboards, and he had a very diverse group of learners learning the Smart Notebook lesson, and he was very patient with all of them. And really, it is one thing to be an awesome teacher of children,
right,
but to be an awesome professional developer, understand adult learning, is a whole nother skill set, and all of them have it, and it's a real privilege to work with them.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next on the about changes to the calendar, and it's on for review and discuss.
You got it. All right. Ready? All right, so you all received my memo, and I will say up front there is a glaring, not typo, just miscalculation on my part. And so it's on the third page where we talk about the snow days. It is not up to June 13th, it's actually June 20th. So as we move forward, that you can see that that's really where the date I'm speaking to. Okay. So for the last 2 years, we've had really crazy weather. And so looking ahead to 13-14 and school years beyond, it provides us an opportunity to really think of and take another look at how we have already established a school year calendar and perhaps how we should look at creating school year calendars going forward. I had wonderful help with colleagues at all of the buildings, and as well as Andrew Nixaji, the WEA president. He and I had an opportunity to meet to talk about how to develop a calendar that meets instructional needs, that meets staff and student needs, and also is responsive to community needs, as well as best practices in terms of how to run an effective school year. I also met with Ginny and Cheryl and Julia, and we talked about the conversations that Andrew and I had, and talked about the conversations that we've been privileged to hear among the board as well as other administrators, and really looked at all the different issues. When you look at some of the issues, one of the initial questions people always talk about is, well, let's look at those traditional holidays, and let's try to convert some of those days into instructional days. As you will see from the memo, and Tom Mooney's language is very clear, you cannot hold school on Saturday or Sunday to make up for those days, and there are very clear guidelines about which days you can and cannot use as instructional days to make up for holidays. So Martin Luther King, New Year's Day, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, all of those December, January days are off the table. The only day at this point that we do not hold school would be Columbus Day. That is a holiday which could be used for an instructional or professional development day. For the 13-14 school year, it is not the recommendation of the administration for us to use that as an instructional or professional development day. It is currently a day that is granted in various employment contracts as a holiday. If we were to go forward and institute that as an instructional or professional development day, we would need to negotiate that with those various bargaining groups. And based on the way the holidays fall for 13-14, it's not a day that really I see as something that is valuable at this time. It is certainly something that could be explored and discussed for 14-15 and beyond, but again, because it does impact various bargaining groups, that's something that would need to be done certainly well in advance. During the weather pattern that we had this year, there were concerns that were expressed regarding parent-teacher conferences. Some of that may have been related to the fact that we had had so many days already where school had been missed, and some of it could have been related to the fact of when conferences fall in relation to Thanksgiving week. Looking at that, my conversations with all of our instructional leaders and the WEA president was really about the value of the conference, the need for the conference. We wholly and truly believe that it is an invaluable experience for both the parents and the teachers. It is a time for feedback to be given in both avenues, to get and to receive for the teachers and the students and the parents. At this point, we have in the schedule and the calendar 5 days for parent-teacher conferences. The recommendation coming forward is to have 4 days for parent-teacher conferences for the 13-14 school year. It is believed to be, as I said, extremely important time for both the parents and the teachers. When you look at the number of parents that access and request parent-teacher conferences at the middle school as well as in the elementary schools, holding the conferences at 4 days is going to be very tight. It is a recommendation that we have been lucky enough to get the support of the WEA to support the administration in saying that this is something that they will move forward with and they'll try.
but know that it is a tight time frame. It's something that we're going to look at, and we're going to see how effective we are using it, and then make a recommendation for how we would move forward for 14-15. That being, in addition to, for whatever the reason, when you look, some years we have a lot of holidays that are within the confines of the 5-day work week, and so some years the end of the year runs longer than others. This is 13-14 would be a year where it would tend to be moved up a bit. However, that being said, we do still see a value in reducing the February vacation from 5 days to a 4-day long weekend scenario. My understanding from speaking with Andrew and with others is that historically, when this was in fact a long weekend in the Wilton calendar, that it was done the Friday and the Monday. And so in going to the 13-14 calendar, the recommendation is to make it on Friday the 14th, which is Valentine's Day. Such a nice trait of love for all. So it would be my recommendation as a matchmaker to have February 14th and February 17th off for 13-14. I try. With those changes to the calendar, then, that actually would push the last day of school up to be June 9th, which would give us 9 full days of snow before any changes would need to be made. And then at that point, the administration's recommendation would be to reduce the school year to 180 instructional days. And then, should we have, fingers crossed, which we have not had yet, if we were to have, I believe it's 11 to 14 snow days, we would start to go into the April vacation.
Wonderful. Before we get into questions, I want everybody watching from home to understand this is not about this year's calendar. It's about next year's calendar. We've already approved next year's calendar, but we're revisiting it based on what we've seen happen this year with the hurricane and last year with weather. So, that being said, this is next year's calendar that we're revisiting. Questions?
When we talked about this year's calendar,
Yes.
and rearranging it, there was some discussion about the value of adding days at the end of the year, and some people felt that they weren't as instructionally valuable as other days. So what I'm seeing here is with an additional 4 instructional days in February, they're all at risk of being canceled and really being made up in June under this scenario. Just because February weather can be brutal.
Yes, that is true. As I was saying, because of the way the calendar year falls this year and where the holidays land, June 9th is really early, which is nice. And so the sense of that summer kind of coming, I think, would certainly be lessened. In addition to that, there's still, even were you to, let's say, typically I believe, Molly, it's 2 to 3 snow days a year that we have used historically prior to these 2 crazy years. So that would put you at June 11th. Point of information is my birthday. But that's really neither here nor there. So, for instance, that would be our last day of school and a great birthday celebration for me. But anyway, sorry, I digress. I do that. So you still are at a point early enough in the year where you have not really gotten to kind of a real summer feel.
Okay, and the June 9th doesn't have any snow days built into it?
Correct.
Okay.
So the odds of school ending before the middle of June is pretty slim.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah.
And what's also nice is by going to only June 20th, we're still ensuring, as small as a time it is, that at least there is 1 full week in between the end of school and the beginning of extended school year, should we need.
Election day.
Yes.
I know there's been lots of discussion about holding school on Election Day. And one of the most logical responses that I heard back was, we need to have professional development days. Election Day is a very convenient, early in the school year opportunity to hold a professional development day when we can get the most out of it from giving additional training to our teachers. Do you want to comment further on that?
Especially for the 13-14 year, I find it extremely important to hold on to that day as a professional development day. As was mentioned by Matt earlier tonight, there is a new teacher evaluation program coming, and that's not just for teachers, it's also for administrators. And so there's a lot of professional development that is going to need to take place so that administrators and teachers, as we both move forward through this new program and evaluation system, have the opportunity to put those supports in place so that we can be successful in implementing and accessing this program. That's a day that would just need to stay as professional development.
I wish there was a way to, we talk about at the meetings, we get reports from Tim about what goes on that day, because both my children came home that Wednesday following Election Day reporting back how excited their teachers had been by the day they had had, and, you know, seeing all the teachers go through voting and saying, oh, we miss the kids, but they also, it's like an exciting day for them, and therefore for our kids, our students, and the kids in town. It should really be embraced that they have this opportunity to, at the end of, you know, after the first quarter is over, to, you know, learn something new and exciting and go into this time of year with just recharged. And even with the storm, they were enthusiastic about how they spent their day. So I just, you know, if there's a way of explaining that to the parents in town, that's not just...
I think the opportunity to educate the town on what we do in professional development days, whenever we hold them, is critical. And the fact that we can utilize Election Day as a double win in this situation sounds like it makes sense. Any other questions?
I just want to confirm that this, as you have outlined here, how we would make up days. So should we be hit with Hurricane Joe Smith or whatever, Lori, right, thank you very much, Lori Laura, next year, that this is the plan we will be following, and we won't be reconvening as a board to try to say how that this is what we will be doing.
That was the complete intention of this, absolutely.
Okay. And I think that that's very, I just want to say, I think that that's very important, and I'd like to see us as a board, as we continue going forward, as we create our calendars, to always put that backup plan in place so that parents can plan around that and know what to expect.
So next year they can buy their airplane tickets.
Whatever.
And they won't get mad at us.
Right. They can make their deposits without sending us emails saying, should I or shouldn't I? So I appreciate that. And, and I like this plan, what you came up with.
Thank you.
Also, as we get to the end of the year and go through this again later in the year, we should also think about going out 3 years. I think Ridgefield had done that, and I think that would be useful.
That's true.
Okay. We can certainly do that.
Wonderful.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda are Mrs. Rothstein and Ms. Schwem talking about the Participation Fee Committee report.
Well, I don't plan to get up and make a fancy presentation. You all received the packet, hopefully, with the agenda packet. This was a committee that we got together, I guess, last year. I spoke to Bruce and said, you know, we hear so much about participation fees, and sometimes at our public hearings, somebody will get up to the microphone and say something, well, in this school they do this, in this district they do that. And I had said to Bruce, I said, I honestly don't know what to think about the situation. I don't know what the real facts are. And so that's when he had said, why don't we form a committee and we'll go out and gather the facts for ourselves and see what we can learn. So Laura and I got started with that and came up with some objectives along the way, and that's what's outlined in your packet. As we got together, the number one thing was we went ahead with the intention just to learn from the facts, but not to draw any conclusions or to make any recommendations, but just to gather the facts and then to present those facts to the board for your education as well. And then we can discuss and then ultimately come up with decisions later. But the other thing that we realized quickly into this process is that it can be extremely overwhelming. And in order to make it doable, we realized we had to narrow our scope of investigation and pick a place to start and just go there. And then as the board deems it necessary to get more information, we can expand our research into other areas. So for this first round, if you will, we focused just on the high school level sports activities, knowing that there's obviously many other areas in which parents contribute money from elementary school all the way through the whole 12 years. We took a look at current DERG A practices for the athletic programs and also fees currently paid by Wilton parents. We reached out to the superintendents, and we were successfully able to contact a few of them. And I should say at this point, as we got into this process, unfortunately, that's when my son ran into some health issues, and I had to step aside for a while as I focused on that, and Chris filled in for me and did a great deal of research for us in my absence. So if you're wondering why she has some answers to some of your questions, that's the reason why. She was kind of a silent partner with us throughout this, and I wanted to give credit where credit was due, that most of this work was done by Laura and Christine, although I drew the short straw to do the actual presentation. So, like I said, we reached out to the superintendents, developed a questionnaire, asking them about their fee practices, and we were able to hear back from some of them, Darien, Region 9, and New Canaan. And the information that they gave us is in your packet. Let's see what's important to pull out here.
Now, are we going to be looking to put this report or parts of it up on the website?
I think whatever you feel, I don't see why.
I have just the information on Wilton Booster Clubs. I've had some responses come in since, so I would like to update that before. But.
Yeah, you can see the one chart there. In conversation with Ridgefield, New Canaan, he put us in contact with Mr. Egan.
No, he is.
He is.
Mr. Egan of New Canaan informed us about Ridgefield's study.
Okay, that's where the confusion. So this is something this is a report that Ridgefield puts together every year, and they contact the different schools, districts in the DERG to get this information. They take a look at, the total number of students, athletic teams, what's being paid to participate versus what the Board of Ed is funding, what's in the budget, and then break it down on a per-student basis. And then you can see a lot of footnotes there and what you see time and time again, hockey is one of those sports that's such an incredibly expensive sport to play that most of these other towns have a supplemental fee that's paid specifically for that sport. I mean, I don't want to go through this line by line if there's any specific questions along the way.
Yeah. Apparently Wilton is the only town where the gate receipts go to the town rather than staying with the Board of Education.
Right.
Did you go behind that at all and find out if those school districts actually maintain their fields? Because here I think that the money goes to town because we don't maintain the fields. But Parks and Recs does.
Right. No, we don't. Right. We don't have that.
Okay.
But talking to Ken, it's not, as significant number as what participation fees would be.
Parks and Rec doesn't indicate. I know that.
Okay. Well, and like you can see there, Westport, it says the gate receipts are $20,000. They used it for equipment, not funded. Right. So.
One of the things I found interesting in your report was that every Wilton student athlete pays $50 for insurance, but that doesn't show up here. My question is, and I understand that's a direct pass-through, it goes directly to insurance, but do those numbers show up in any of the other schools?
Well, and that's one thing we found is that there's no real apples-to-apples comparison from town to town. In some cases, yes, it shows up under participation fee, and in other cases, like in Wilton, it doesn't show up because it is a pass-through expense. And that's the one thing we learned, is that it was hard to compare town to town.
Well, it's also in the towns. If you look at the chart of the, our DRG, you can look at the numbers, but then if you read the description, they'll say, we don't have a participation fee, however sports all fund themselves, So even you have to read, there's a lot of, nothing is black and white, there's a lot of wiggle around.
Read between the lines.
Perceptions and how whether it's a spin or just the way they perceive it. They're funding all their other sports, and I think there's no there's varying, we thought we'd go out and get a lot of data, and the reality is a lot of it is perception, and speaking to different people, you get different responses. And
The one thing that seems to be consistent, though, is that all towns have booster clubs
Yes.
at the high school level.
And some of the towns have it, it's just one singular club
Right.
that covers all the
Mhm.
sports versus individual
And
ones.
Darien, I think, is the Blue Wave, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
Darien also.
It's interesting, of the Board of Ed dollars per student, Wilton still ranks fourth, even though we totally fund 100% out of 7.
But if you look, though later to that comment, we fund 100%. If you look to the Booster Club report that Laura was putting together, do you keep going? Next one. That one, that report there. We went to the Booster Club, we tried to contact each of the Booster Club presidents and find out from them what money they're collecting. So although the school, Wilton, we don't say, write us a check for $100 for participation fees. You can see as you look to the booster clubs, the parents are writing checks to the booster clubs in order to support it. So it's all a matter of to whom the money is going.
Right. To echo Gil's comment, there's 7 schools that you looked at here. 3 of those schools pay more through the Board of Ed to support their student athletes than Wilton does. 3 pay less than we do. I think that says something about the efficiency of our program.
And it's also important to note that Richfield, that has a participation fee, they also have booster clubs. So
Right.
I was shocked at how expensive some of this, on top of after paying their participation fee to the school district, then how much they have to pay involved in the booster club. And another comment I've been talking, the more people I talk to, the more impressed I was with how much time is given by the parents in this community, and also beyond the parents. I mean, the businesses that support the booster club, that take out ads in their programs, people whose kids have grown and they're still involved in things. I mean, it's very impressive the amount of time, which you can't put a, there's no fee to that, but we're incredibly fortunate to have that in our community.
It does also look here, when you look at the pay-to-play revenue, it's relatively small in the 4 towns that have it, with the exception of Ridgefield, which is very high by an order of magnitude over the other towns.
And it doesn't approach what some members of the public have said pay-to-play will generate. Doesn't
Yeah,
approach
that's true.
that.
That's true. Yeah, it's $323,000.
I wonder how many students have dropped out.
Well, that's an
I don't
interesting
know.
point, Bill, because anecdotally, if you look in the written part of the report, some of the comments we heard were things such as, if my child's on a sports team now and I pay for them to participate, and now they spend most of the season, on the B string or on the bench, they're asking for refunds or at least partial refunds. So that's an issue they're dealing with. And then the other thing is typically we'll say, well, then I'll have them do track and field because everybody participates in track and field. But then when participation fees were implemented, they pulled them from that as well. So to your point.
Interesting. Any other thoughts, comments, questions?
Was there any other things specifically that you would highlight tonight? The other chart you see there is one that was provided to us by Ken, which this takes a look at it statewide. That's the one that's a little bit more of an eye test there. Yeah, sorry. But it's not completely, there are some missing towns, but I don't know why that.
It's a voluntary survey.
It's a voluntary, okay. Well, there you go, so.
Well, I think this is really very good, and it answers a lot of questions that come up every year.
That's for sure. And again, this
At least
is
provides
simply
information,
sports at the high school. We didn't even get into music programs, AP classes, math classes where a parent has to buy a $150 calculator in order for them to take the class. So there's so much more research that can be done, and we'll take the direction from the board as to, in addition to this, what other information you would like to consider. But at least this is a starting point to just kind of get a feel for just how much parents are really paying in order for their child to participate.
Well, based on that, I'll put the question to the board. kind of open-ended. Where do we go from here? Thoughts, comments? Do we want to think on it for a couple weeks and come back and discuss it further? Or do we have ideas as to what we might like to do as a next step?
I'd like to take some time.
Yeah, especially after, since we have our workshop sets and everything.
Yeah,
That's what I was
okay.
thinking.
We're just getting into the
Yeah.
budget.
Okay.
Numbers and
Good.
It's good research to have.
Lori, Laura, Chris, thank you very much. Wonderful. Next on the agenda is facilities report by Mr. Post, if he doesn't fall.
Good evening. I think you all know John Murphy, our supervisor of custodial maintenance services. What I'm going to do is, and you have in your packets the non-recurring site work chart, which is what we're proposing to put in our operating budget, and then the long-range capital bonding plan. So I'll quickly walk through the projects on each of these plans, and then we'll take your questions and answer them as best we can. So starting with the non-recurring site work in the operating budget. Many of these projects you've seen before. They've been on the radar for a while. At Miller and Driscoll, we're proposing to do a small amount of carpet and tile replacement, mainly in the front office and entryway area. Playground equipment, I believe on the site formerly known as Driscoll. And things like that, of course, will depend on what happens with the Miller-Driscoll Building Committee. So this could change depending on how that project goes.
According to Mr. Brennan, it looks like it'll slide a year, so some of this may need to happen.
Okay. Not just the timing of the project, but the scope.
Okay.
And replace the clock system. I think we've got a very antiquated clock system there where clocks have been routinely malfunctioning, and we've had to replace them with
sundial.
Yeah. So.
Is the PA system a part of the clock system in that building?
I don't believe so. And then for the following year, we have the security measures, which is would be a continuation of our security camera projects. And again, all of this depends on the scope and timing of the project, the building project. At Cider Mill, we're continuing our ceiling tile replacement project, and they are the next school in line to get the security cameras, so we've proposed that we do that this year. And then beginning in 14-15, again, replacing playground equipment, and I believe that would be the equipment on the south side of the building.
Are there funds available or grants to be had for security measures? I know when we first started this program, you were very successful in finding.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any at the moment. That was Homeland Security grant money that was available, I think so it was 5 or 6 years ago when we began this. At Middlebrook, you heard about the STEM and the Family and Consumer Science proposals. Family and Consumer Science Room has been on our plan for quite a number of years, and the facility just gets older and more worn, so we're really hoping that we'll have the support to do that this year. The classrooms for STEM would be a two-year, two-step process. First year would be gutting and renovating the existing rooms, which means pulling out all the existing equipment, patching the floor where things are bolted in, probably retiling the floor. If you're familiar with the room at all, there's a welding area in there that has duct work and probably roof penetration, so there's a lot of work getting stuff out of there and repairing in the aftermath, probably redoing the electrical, obviously painting and things like that, and then bringing in some storage racks for all the materials and equipment that they are going to buy. And we're going to in the first year get racks that will be probably more like the wire storage racks that you would find maybe in your garage or basement, that will work and keep everything where it needs to be until they can come to grips with the exact magnitude of what they're going to be using in there and what permanent solution would be best for them, and then we can take those racks and use them elsewhere in the district where storage is needed.
Ken, one of the questions I had, but Tim told me to hold on to my question, was would there be any opportunity to sell any of the equipment that's coming out, or...
Well, no, it's
Maybe
you bring
it's
that up.
vintage.
No, there's a lot of the existing metalworking equipment we want to keep. The guys save the district a fair amount of money by fabricating parts for old hardware that we can't get anymore. So we're going to find a way to collect and put that in and make a new shop. Actually, we're thinking of chiseling out some space in the boiler room down here. So we're going to keep what we can use. And the rest of it, I was already toying with, whether we put it on eBay or find some way, because there's a lot of good, especially the woodworking equipment, we don't have a lot of use for, and it would be a shame not to try and get some of that value back. So, the wheels are already turning about trying to do that.
There's nothing factored in these numbers to count on recovery of funds, though.
And that's in a good working condition,
unlike
the Middlebrook seats, which we couldn't get.
And if you get that, where would that, if you were able to sell the big piece, where would that go then in your?
We would credit it to that account.
That line item. Okay. All right.
And then the second year would be the permanent storage solution for that room. And we also had on the plan last year to replace the grease trap outside of the kitchen at Middlebrook. Something new on the radar for Middlebrook is to replace the gymnasium heaters. I don't know if you've ever been in there when they are on. Typically, the teachers have to have them turned off to conduct class because they're quite loud. So we put that in for next year, 14-15. And then additional security measures in the following year to kind of finish off the camera project. They've identified other areas where they believe they would be helpful. In high school, we have the ongoing project of refurbishing classrooms, about $30,000 per year. That'll be furniture, millwork, whatever needs to be done in classrooms. In recent years, we did the art rooms, and we did some work in the culinary room recently also. Overhead mat storage in the field house has been on the radar for a long time, as has painting the field house. We're actually getting a couple of quotes for painting the field house, and they've kind of been a wide gulf between the couple of quotes we got, so we're doing a little more homework on that. We have the ongoing project to replace classroom doors every year, and then again a second phase of security cameras, and then replacing some of the stair treads and the stairwells where they're getting worn out. You want to do questions on the operating budget first before I go into the capital?
Sure.
Okay.
Questions?
Are the stair treads okay for another year?
Yes, we've already replaced the ones that were really coming apart this past year. Last year we had a little extra money.
The bathroom renovations, right?
That'll be on capital.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Good.
That was already approved last year. It's not on
I
the
know
plan
last
anymore.
year it was originally just to do the study.
Yeah, the construction money.
No, the whole thing was approved.
All right.
The overhead mat storage, is that really needed? I mean, we've done without it for so many years.
Where are the mats kept now? This is at the high school.
I would have to defer to the high school principal on that one.
Off to the side of the room.
Oh, the overhead mat storage?
Yeah, it's been on our radar for so long. Is it really needed?
We foresee deferring it for a few more years.
Where are the mats stored right now?
Yeah, where are they stored now?
In the storage area, athletic area, and sometimes out in the field house.
Gotcha. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We did the dividers last year, didn't we? We haven't done the dividers yet?
No. We did it in Miller Driscoll.
We've
Yes,
heard of one on
that was
Miller
replaced.
Driscoll. But we have...
There was a problem with the there was the batting cage and the divider.
I thought
It turned out that putting in the batting cage in the field house prohibited us from doing the dividers.
Okay. On the capital?
Okay, on the capital. You'll see there is nothing in on the runway for 13-14. Beginning in 14-15, most of the projects revolve around the proposed Yankee Gas project, where we will have either replacing boilers or converting burners to convert over to natural gas. And these numbers are actually based on estimates we got from BVH. To do that, they recommend replacing the boiler in Cider Mill and replacing the boiler in Middlebrook, but just replacing the burners at high school. I also have placeholders in here for oil tank replacement. We would have to replace the oil tanks should we not convert to natural gas. So if that project actually does happen and we do convert, these numbers would be reduced and it would become an oil tank removal project as opposed to a replacement project. Unless we were to make the decision at some point in time to go dual fuel if we could, and then we'd have to decide if that's willing to absorb that expense.
I was wondering if these would have the ability to go both ways, either gas or oil.
Yeah, but unfortunately it does factor a little bit into what kind of system you go with, because if you get a dual fuel, you limit getting a condensing boiler and you lose efficiency.
Yeah.
You lose
Yeah,
efficiency.
efficient.
So the question is if you want to have faith in the Yankee Gas or not. So.
The price of gas.
Who knows?
You do not have any of the Miller Driscoll renovations on here.
No.
Why
That is in the hands of the Board of Selectmen right now.
Okay. Do you think that oil tank replacement at Miller Driscoll is an accurate number? Because I'd heard a much lower number at one point.
For an oil tank replacement?
Yes.
We'll obviously have to find out at some point in time. We believe it was about $150,000 per, and this is for two. There's two of them there.
Okay. And are we comfortable that those tanks will last another couple of years?
They get tested
every year.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks.
Now we're on to the financial report.
Okay. As of the end of November, I'm projecting a budget deficit of $690,048. This is due to overages in special education outplacements and contracted services expenditures. Special education outplacements are over budget due to an unexpected increase in the number of outplaced students and the number of unbudgeted legal settlements. Many of these outplacements and settlements are the result of a recent increase in the number of students being identified as having social and emotional disorders. The special education contracted services are over budget due to unanticipated and unbudgeted services for students. These services include behavior therapies, vocational training, independent psychological and speech evaluations, and audiological services. And all of these services are either required by IDEA to be done independently or are beyond the scope of our expertise. The total projected special education deficit is $998,818. Our excess cost claim was filed on December 1st for $832,178. We expect that the amount of our claim will increase when we file the updated claim in March. Since the excess cost claim does not exceed the special education deficit, the partial spending freeze that was implemented 2 months ago is still in place. For the 5 months ended November 30th, health benefit expenditures are over budget by $145,337. This figure includes the $461,000 that the board contributed to the teachers' health savings accounts at the beginning of the fiscal year. Ed Norgard's preliminary estimate is that our claims for the year will be very close to the budget. I'll take any questions you have.
Probably know the answer to this, but if other towns in Connecticut also have a huge increase in special ed spending, does that affect how much the state gives us back? Like, is there a limited amount of pool at the state level?
There is a limited pool, and the excess cost claim that we put in is for anything we spend that's over 4.5 times our average per pupil expenditure. So every town, the threshold differs because their per pupil might be different. But there is, the General Assembly sets in the budget a fixed amount of money for the excess cost grant. That's why it's typically not funded at 100%. So everybody puts their claims in, and if they have enough money to cover 80% of it, everybody gets 80%.
So here's the thing, as low as 65.
Yeah.
So there's a swing in
Yeah.
your point. Because they got a $400 million problem.
We've also been given a heads up that there's a good chance the town will see at least a 10% reduction in all funds coming from the state. So we can be looking forward to that gift. You have a question?
I was going to just comment that usually our excess cost claim at this point in time is a couple $100,000 higher.
That's correct. In recent years, we've had a number of our higher cost students age out of the system. And we have
one thing too, they also raised our threshold by almost $4,000. So there were some students who in the past might have qualified and this year didn't.
They're just missing it.
So they raised
Yeah, we have a lot who just miss it. And the good news is we're educating those students for less, but the bad news is we get nothing back.
Right.
The percentage above the normal student cost is 4.5.
4.5 times.
Any other questions, comments?
That makes sense. If our cost per student went up $1,000
Right, the
last
threshold
year,
goes up 4.5.
That's the $4,000. I understand.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
At this point, we move on to policy and regulation 4111, recruitment, selection, and appointment of certified and non-certified staff, as well as a number of others by Mrs. Anderson.
I know you missed them, so that's why they're back. Don't worry, I just took a minor break. Okay, so we're going to start with policy 4111. It's 3 ones. I don't know how many I just said. 4111. Okay. Exactly. Recruitment, selection, and appointment of certified and non-certified staff. As you'll see, the underlined text is additional text. What we wanted to do is to make sure that we're very clear and deliberate in understanding that we employ both certified and non-certified staff, and that we need to treat those staff differently for the purpose that some staff are covered under state statutes and others are not. In the general policy statement, there is a new statement that was incorporated in, and then the following statement was taken out. This is what I've done in a few of the policies, just allows us to be able to incorporate all of the protected classes, and so therefore we don't have to come back every year when a new class is added to change our policy. In addition, it also kind of synthesizes some of the information that are in existing policies and other places and putting them back in. Should a person be nominated by the superintendent? That's language that exists in another policy. So that's why that's now incorporated into that policy. For policy 4111B, that's just the statement of the non-certified staff. So it incorporates that into that policy. Got it? Okay, great. Moving on. Regulation 41111. There, again, that's just really just to accent the fact that this is for our certified staff. Great. All righty. Policy 4111. I did it again. Point 1, we are eliminating because it is a redundant policy. It's a policy statement that already is included in another policy. There it goes out. Okay, moving right along. Regulation 41111.2. All right, I got through it. Is our minority staff recruitment policy. Policies are policies. They are not goal or mission statements. Therefore, the first line, the goal statement, has been taken out and has been reworded so that it reflects the policies and the state statutes by which this policy should exist. Again, in the hiring process, what's been done is the language regarding specific policies has been taken out. We've just broadened that to make sure that it is always inclusive of all the areas in which we need. And it also just cleans up some of the language to make it a little bit more clearly defined. For Section C, retention, the state has changed, and this is in its second or third year. It's got to be, my daughter's 2, that was 3, so 3 years ago, sorry. So 3 years ago, they switched from the BEST to the TEAM program, and so this is reflective of that.
Jane, this
Yes.
is a regulation. Is there a policy that has changes with it?
No, I have not, they're not at this time.
Okay. So all the changes are in the regulation?
Correct.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay, great.
Questions, comments?
Is there anything separate, Jenna?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
No.
Everybody else fine with that?
All right, great. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Action items. Policy and Regulation 5147, Suicide Prevention and Intervention. Mrs. Paul, sent for discuss and approve.
Trying to be nearly as energetic as Jane.
And I have no caffeine in my drink.
Whoa. I thought that was sugar-free, that drink.
It is.
Okay.
Whoa.
The only change was an addition of some language based on some comments from Mrs. Burke about making sure that parents had written information about resources to follow up the phone call if they couldn't come to school.
Right.
Other than that, it's the way it was presented.
Motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for your
Thank you
work
very
on
much.
this and
Thank
a lot
you.
of work on this.
We are now on for a gift to the Wilton High School Orchestra. Mr. O'Donnell.
Good evening, Dr. Richards, members of the Board of Education. We thank you for considering this generous gift that would really benefit our orchestra program and our string students. You can see we have a gift proposal for a string-based instrument. Current value $7,500. I would propose it as a win-win. It would be good for our students, and we have an alum who is willing to donate it and have an opportunity to give something back to his high school. So we think it's a good idea for us to have it for our students.
I move that we accept the gift with gratitude.
Second.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Made Marty meet today.
Yes, we did.
Beautiful.
Okay, future business, timeline, future agenda. We have a,
Correction, it's 3 o'clock.
Is it 3 o'clock or 6 o'clock?
it's 3 o'clock. We have a budget review and study session at 3 o'clock at the Wilton Professional Library on December 20th. All other information is on the website. At this point, we look for comments from the public, as we do at the end of every meeting. Is there anybody that would like to come speak to us? Seeing none, I'd like to remind everybody that they can contact us via the Board of Ed email address, and I look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Aye.
We're all in favor.